Good morning, everyone. Well, how are you? I'm John McEwen. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance, and on behalf of the staff, our board, and our incredible Cultural Access Network Committee, thank you so much for being with us for the 14th Annual Cultural Access Awards today. So thank you. And to kick us off, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Eileen Forat, Program Officer of the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, and an incredible partner to the Theater Alliance in this work. Mary Eileen.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see people not in boxes. So thank you for coming. And, I just want to say thank you to John and the staff and everybody at the Theater Alliance that makes the Cultural Access Network move forward. This past year we've had Access Thursdays, learning. We've had workshops on how to do ADA plans. We have the new template for the ADA plans, which hopefully makes things easier. And, without all this work and your commitment, we wouldn't be moving this work forward. So thanks for coming. I'm looking forward to learning today, as well as everybody else, and then enjoying the awards in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Eileen. So I'd like to just give a visual description of myself. So I'm a cis male. I have brown, gray hair, more gray than brown lately. Parted on the side. I have a mustache and small beard. I'm wearing blue wired framed glasses. I have a white shirt, pink and blue dotted tie with a light blue sports coat and navy pants and tan shoes. And I'm so thrilled to introduce this incredible panel and my partner, Beth Provor, who is the Cultural Access Coordinator for the Theater Alliance. And each one I'll introduce, and they will be giving a visual description of themselves. Hello, Beth.
Hello, John. Hi, everybody. God, it really is so nice to see people in person. Hi, Beth Prevor, she, her pronouns. I am a white, mature woman with short gray. I know that's what we're trying to figure out how to go. I didn't want to say senior citizen or something. I'm mature. I have short gray hair. I'm wearing kind of brown Warby Parker glasses, which I love doing that, Warby Parker. I'm wearing a kind of black jacket. I'm wearing kind of a black with flowers on the bottom shirt, black pants, and I'm just glad to see everybody, so welcome. And I'm going to pants. Oh.
I do have my own. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Hwang. I am the Director of Guest Services here at Grounds for Sculpture. I am an Asian female with short dark hair, swept to the left. I'm wearing a navy blue shirt today and a left arm full of tattoos. I'm going to pass it on over to Erica.
I did not turn on. And I can't see it. I need arm extenders. Can you hear me? No.
No. Wait, try that.
Thank you, Reed. I am Erica Saganowski. I am the Executive Director of the Mercer County Office on Aging and the Aging and Disability Resource Connection here in Mercer County. I am a white female. I have short, medium-length, dark brown hair, brown eyes, and I am wearing a black sleeveless top with blue flowers and a black skirt.
My name is Reed Thomas. I am the Disability Specialist at the Mercer County Aging and Disability Resource Connection. I am a white man, middle-aged, about 6 foot tall. I have brown hair. I have a goatee, which is mostly brown, but more gray every day. I am wearing a black polo shirt and tan pants.
Me?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
No, sorry.
Here? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Wanda Williford. I am president of the New Jersey Council of the Blind. I am a black female. Today I am wearing a white cardigan, white pants, and a black tank that says I am blessed. And I have a very luxurious curly brown afro, big hair, don't care.
Good morning. This is very new for me. Like, I usually don't have time to describe what I look like or focus on me, so I had to write mine down. So I am Namecca Parker. Of course, I didn't have to write that part down. I'm the general manager of AccessLink, which is the Paratransit division of New Jersey Transit. I'm a Black woman, short curly hair, not as luxurious as Miss Wanda's. Bright red lipstick, tasteful makeup, bright red suit, and happy to be here. So, welcome.
Well, we're so delighted to have this panel join us, and you can read about their incredible background in your program that you picked up this morning when you checked in, because we want to get right to a conversation that we're very excited about. As you read this, we're going to be talking about the importance of accessibility before and after, because so often I think we all think about the actual service itself to make our cultural experience accessible, but we don't always think about what the important things that happen before somebody attends our venue, and also what happens afterwards. So I want to ask Beth to just talk to a few minutes about how we got to this topic, because I want to thank Beth. As we were brainstorming with our Cultural Access Network Committee, Beth really focused us in on this important conversation. So I just want you to share a few words how you got to this point.
Well, I think I got to this point, I think things started several years ago, actually, through the Theater Alliance. We did a series of focus groups with a variety of people with disabilities about their experiences. And a lot of this focused on their experiences and listening to people talk about the preparation involved in getting to a venue and the organization that was involved, the transportation issue, the bathroom facility, accessibility, the time period that you had to start. And people were starting weeks in advance. So it's not like, I think, people are used to, where you'd like to go someplace, you look up the venue, you buy a ticket, and you go. And I think that we're, in general, I think in the field, we've so focused, as John said, on the services that we provide once you get there, that we really don't ever look at the issues of how you get there and what happens after you get there. And I know from personal experience, as somebody with a mobility disability, I drive. I live in New York City, and I drive every place. And what I need to do in advance to find out what the parking situation is before I get there. Is there a bathroom? Is the information listed on somebody's website? Do I trust the information that's listed on somebody's website? Do I have to not drink starting at noon if there is no bathroom that's accessible? Because I know, and what that does to me as an attendee for my day. If I'm thinking all day, okay, I hope I can make it through a 3-hour show at 8 o'clock, I have to stop drinking at noon because I don't want to fill up. And what that does to me as somebody who wants to enjoy going to the theater, these are the things that I start thinking about. And I don't think that these are necessarily the things that the organizations are considering when somebody goes to the theater. So I think in this time now where we're not talking so much about kind of issues of accessibility, we're talking about engagement and experiences for all our audiences and what the experience is like, looking at somebody with a disability and what that means in terms of their experience and what people have to do. And so I think this whole idea about, as a regular person, you go with friends, you want to go for dinner after friends, the idea of somebody having to plan an accessible transportation and having to get to a space 2 hours in advance, or having to wait 2 hours after, or having to hope that your accessible the transportation shows up. And what if they don't show up? It's all these things that become, in addition to buying a ticket and getting there, these are things that people have to think about. And so it's what the experience is like that I think is just a conversation that nobody is having. And so the idea that this is what we came up with, I think, is just another layer of what we've always been talking about in terms of accessibility, is that it's not just what happens when you get in the door. It's really trying to understand the experience. So I thank you all for having this. I mean, I do hope it's an open conversation. I mean, we're trying to do this in a somewhat, casual presentation, but really it should be participatory. You ask questions, make comments, but I think understanding and have this be part of accessibility and the programs that you do, thinking about this, I think is such an important component that is just new, and I think it's really exciting. And I thank the Theater Alliance, and I thank you all, and I definitely thank the panel for coming.
Great, thanks, Beth. So as Beth mentioned, several years ago, we did do a series of focus groups. And these were individuals with disabilities, a wide range of disabilities, that were interested in culture. And we wanted to hear about their perceptions and their barriers. What do you think was number one? Transportation. I think transportation is challenging everywhere, but it's especially challenging here in New Jersey. If you're getting to New York or to Philadelphia, maybe it's a little bit easier, but being able to get in around our state, inside the state, can be a bit of a challenge. So this is where I'm going to start with you, Namecca. So if you could tell us a little bit about AccessLink, because this is a number one. We get phone calls all the time. I'm sure many of your organizations get calls about the transportation. And because it is such a challenge, if you could tell us a little bit about AccessLink's services, and also maybe some ideas on information that you could utilize and from our cultural community, how maybe you could partner more, or the cultural organizations could partner more with AccessLink, that would be a great way to start today's conversation. Thank you.
Okay. So AccessLink is like I said, the federally mandated paratransit service. So any state agency that has fixed route service has to have paratransit. New Jersey, the ADA law was passed in 1990. AccessLink began in 1993. So we've been here for a while. It's been growing steadily. We shadow the local fixed route bus. What does that mean? If big bus doesn't do it, little bus doesn't do it. That's the simplest way I could kind of explain it. We get calls about the service area, like places we don't go. So New Jersey is not transportationally connected by bus only. It's a complete system. We also shadow the light rail. A lot of people don't know that. They just focus on fixed route. We do not shadow the rail station. So if you live in a place where there's a lot of heavy rail, we try to work with people to give them travel training to use the systems that they are by. But you made a point that it might be a little easier in New York and Philadelphia. It's definitely not. Bigger cities, you tend to get lost in these bigger spaces. So in New Jersey, we have the luxury of really being connected to the customers, attuned with some of the issues. But I love this question of what can we do to kind of connect the dots and partner up. The best thing I would say is when you have an idea about an event, a program, any gathering, collaborate with your transportation provider immediately, because they can give you feedback and insight into what transportation they can do, what's a stretch, and other options. People usually call and start that part of the conversation well into planning, and then you start finding out there's no service after 6 o'clock, and you can't undo the other plans. So as soon as you have that first thought of, hey, we might want to do something, or just invite that transportation provider, and it might be multiple providers. That's the other thing. People think it's just AccessLink. We have county providers. A lot of cities have their own transportation. You would be surprised how many Department of Transportation or Division of Transportations exist in New Jersey alone. So we do partner with different group locations, different organizations. When they have an event, They usually send us their event calendar. That helps us put it on our radar. So if we do need to add extra resources like staff, support, somebody to be your point person for the gathering, we can do that. But we can't do that like on a turn of a dime because, you know, we have staff and we want to treat them nicely too. We don't want to ruin their weekends and holidays. The other thing I would say is we have a lot of services that people just aren't aware of. So if you are interested in really having transportation as a selling point to your event, reach out to us. We have an outreach division. They come out, they educate the group, the organization, patrons, customers, whoever is interested in public transportation. So they don't just come out and talk about AccessLink, even though we're great, you know, we're wonderful, but they talk about all accessible features of the whole system. If you are going to New York, they give you information, they help you coordinate the thing. And if you book with AccessLink, you don't have to pay for the rail part of the trip. You know, like it's a lot of financial bonuses to working with us that we could kind of educate people on. So group trips, if it's a group outing or something like that, it's easier for us to coordinate with one person on behalf of the 30 or the 20, as opposed to 30 different people calling, because now you're trying to coordinate something that is a little more difficult. So reach out to the transportation organization, learn about your transportation that's available well in advance of any event. And then you can put that on, you know, your material. You can put our information there. We work with the marketing team, we work with your marketing team. So really collaborate through the whole process, not just for like one event. So that's my kind of best suggestion.
And Namecca, if you could send us the information on how best organizations can connect, we can send it out to the master list. We'll also put it under the resource section of the cultural access area within our website so that you have that. I also thought it was interesting that you have staff members that could actually speak to some cultural organizations. And one thing I was thinking about is maybe doing a group of cultural organizations by geographic area. Rather, because we have so many of, and not all of our cultural organizations are necessarily on any kind of main transportation line. We do have some, but I think if we could do, maybe we could do them by county, perhaps, and really have an opportunity for the cultural organizations in each county to get together with individuals, with colleagues of Namecca's to just learn a little bit about the services that could be provided within that particular geographic region. So those were some thoughts that I think would be really beneficial.
That would be really helpful because transportation happens at like several different levels. So if it's a city organization, like you might be surprised that they have transportation that they provide. So that would definitely be helpful. Yeah.
And I think we've, as we review all of your ADA plans, we do go on all of your websites. And one of the things that we don't see too often is information on how to get to your venue. We see it if you drive a car, but we don't see it for other modes of transportation to your venue. So when we get this information out to you, I think it would be a benefit to your patrons if you include all aspects of possibilities of transportation, and also that there is a specific contact person at your organization if there was a question. So and when we get this information out to you, just to share that with the individuals that oversee your website to ensure that that information is getting up on your sites. Because in our focus groups, what do you think is the #1 way individuals find out about what's happening around the state culturally? What would be #1? That's actually #2. So the first is actually word of mouth. Because, as Beth was saying earlier, the trust factor, do I trust the website? Do I trust the information from the person at the organization that's telling me the various, answering the questions that I've posed. So that's number one, is the word of mouth, and the second is definitely the website. So just getting that information up there will be extremely helpful. So Wanda, if you could share with us, and Wanda is a wonderful advocate of arts and culture and attending many of our state's cultural treasures. And if you could maybe, as Beth shared a little bit of her story, if you could share with us a little bit about the preparation to attend a cultural event, what services and assistance might be needed from the cultural organization before you order tickets, make a reservation, attend, just to kind of walk us through your journey and process in order to attend a cultural activity.
Okay, so Beth pretty much kind of covered it, but I'm going to give you my perspective as a blind person. So I love culture, arts, sports. I loved it prior to losing my vision, and just this past week I went to a concert. So it's kind of always on my mind. I'm always looking for ways to engage and go to museums or restaurants or shows. And for me, just like Beth described and John mentioned, the first thing I think about is, okay, I'm going to go to this website after someone else has recommended it, of course. I'm going to go to this website and I'm going to look for a search box, and I'm going to search accessibility to see what is available at this particular venue. Do they have accessible tickets? I want to make sure that the venue itself doesn't have any obstacles or barriers in terms of me navigating with my cane, and that there is also accessible parking if I'm going with a sighted person. And if I'm not going with a sighted person, and let's say I'm going to try and venture out by myself, or I'm going with another blind or low vision person, then I want to make sure that if it's a show that they have audio description, for example. And if they have audio description, is it a situation where I have to download an app prior to going? Because some situations are that you download an app and it's kind of like recorded audio description depending on the performance. Other times it's live audio description, which is the best. And you put a headset on, you're listening to the describer describe the action in between the scenes and things of that nature. So, and if it's a museum or some other kind of venue where I'm looking at still art or sculpture or things of that nature, I want to know that I can go and enjoy the art pieces and things like a sighted person would. So there are a lot of spaces now, thankfully, that are aware that they not only need to describe, oh, this is, John Smith's piece and he designed it or he created it in 1985, they also need to describe the piece itself, what it looks like, an actual description. So even though I can't see it, I still would like to get a really good representation of that thing that I'm trying to take in the tone or the nature of in that space. A lot of people say, well, Wanda, why do you go to museums? Because I've always gone to museums. And although I can't see the piece, I still want to kind of take that all in real time. So for me, it's, like I said, if I need audio description, finding out how that works in that particular space. Again, transportation, making sure I can get there. I'll look to see if it's an AccessLink point. Sometimes I'll call AccessLink immediately and say, okay, I'm thinking of going to this space. Can I get there by Paratransit, by AccessLink? And if not, then I have to take an Uber or something of that nature. The other thing that I think about is also, am I going to eat? And I look for restaurants that are in that area, are they accessible? Do they have, and I have friends, I currently am not fluent in Braille, I don't read Braille, but I have blind friends who do read Braille. So do they have Braille menus? I'll call and, find those things out. So, there's a lot that goes into it, but again, like Beth said, sometimes I have to plan things like a month out, which I know sounds a lot for those who, can buy a ticket, get in a car, and go, but there's a lot that goes into the planning. So, anything else, John, that I not mention?
Nope, I think you covered it, and in a few minutes after our panel all give some remarks, we're going to be opening this up for some really good conversation. Beth?
Okay. Am I on?
Yep.
Hi, this is Beth. I think the one thing that I want to add is, as a person with a disability, it's exhausting sometimes. The amount of work that you have to do in addition to, forget the ultimate where you're going, but the preparation and what Wanda was saying is the work that we have to do. So we're always looking for allies. And I think even the issue of what you put on your website, putting this information on your website at least shows me as a person that you're thinking and considering everything that I need to be able to get to your venue. So it's not just solely on us to have to find all these things. So it's just a really clear indication that the more information you can put, whether it's under your accessibility tab or wherever you put, your accessible information, the more detailed information you give, it just kind of shows a disabled person that these are things that you're thinking about what we have to go through. So it really is, it's not just the information that's there, it really is something that gives the indication to a person looking for the information that, oh, we're not alone. We're not, we're not kind of like solely depending on, this is what I have to do myself, but somebody else has thought or recognized that I need this information to be able to attend. So I applaud you for, now thinking about this, and I do think, the other thing I think that Namecca said is, we're looking for partnerships. It's a collaboration. This is something that we want everybody to do together. So we don't want it to be solely on the disabled person or solely on the organization. The more we can work together and the more information you can provide in advance, the less we have to, think, I have to call Paratransit and I have to go through. If you give me the number, or that kind of shows, oh wow, you've actually checked this out in advance. So it just is another helpful indication to us that, wow, it's not just when I get there's an audio description performance, but you've kind of thought that this is important information. And thank you for doing that.
We often in our workshops that I know many of you have attended over the years, as we talk about the cultural experience begins long before the actual cultural event, right? So if you think about your relationship with an organization, it really starts when you look at a website, if you see something in the paper, certainly word of mouth, and then your trip to the cultural venue, what happens inside the venue before the performance or the tour of the exhibit begins, and then also when you leave and go to your next destination. That's really a part of your entire cultural experience. So it's really important to think about it that way, that it's more than just the actual cultural event itself. It's everything that does come before and after that people will remember when they think of your organization. And so this is a good leadway into SAM. I just want to give a shout out to Grounds for Sculpture, because I'm going to be shouting out to them throughout the day for being such great partners and hosting us. And many, many patrons come through Grounds for Sculpture. And so, Sam, if you could just talk as the Director of Guest Services, some of the things that you and your colleagues are thinking about to better prepare and be of service to the patrons before, during and after their visit to the grounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, John. A lot of this is just listening to the feedback. Things like the Access roundtables and even like feedback surveys that we send out. I know all of us are used to getting that feedback survey from any cultural institution or anywhere that you go. And you know, I think most of us, or at least I, don't necessarily fill it out because I don't know if anyone's really listening. But changing the idea of like guest services as being, no, we're gonna take a look at these feedback surveys and we're gonna listen to our guests. Anytime that they have feedback is taking it in and making little adjustments here and there so that overall, you know, we're not waiting for a big critical like thing to happen before we make a change. It's making those small little adjustments. An example I have is actually we, as you were all coming in, you saw the big main gate that we have, and we used to close that right when we closed at 5 o'clock. And what we didn't realize was that a lot of folks were either getting picked up or like they needed to access Sculptor's Way, essentially, when they were leaving. And just making that small adjustment of leaving that gate open, actually, a couple hours after we closed, gave everyone access to, you know, transportation needs that they might have. We also are restructuring the way we essentially do the guest services training and thinking in less of a way of like, this is the information you need to know to help the guests, but how can we anticipate needs before a guest actually comes to visit here? I know Wanda like mentioned some, like, you know, Wanda and Beth both mentioned, hey, like how much planning goes into this? How much information can we get on the website? But also thinking through our call center, how many different ways of access can we give someone who maybe doesn't have time to call us but can email us, or who can actually use the live chat on our website to get a quick answer as soon as possible and responding to all these inquiries as soon as possible. I think a lot of times we'll send an email out to a place that we want to come visit and we get a response 2 weeks later, and it's like, that's not great. Maybe they wanted to come the next day. And it's like, how can we respond as quickly as possible, and how can we adjust and adapt as quickly as possible so that way their experience as a whole just feels like, you know, we thought about what their experience would be like here.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Another thing that's really helpful when you're working with transportation is if you, even if it's just for the event, have a designated, decorated space so that the driver and the customer knows this is where I'm going to be meeting this AccessLink bus or Uber or whatever, is really helpful, especially when it's like a crowded event with multiple entrances. Just thinking about that part of it. So if the space could be well lit, bright enough for the driver to kind of identify and hone in on quickly, even if like the trailblazing signs are great, like AccessLink pick up this way. So anything you can think about outside just to make that location really help identifiable for the customer and the operator, that is a great thing. One customer used to wear like a bright pink hat, and that's what she would put on her trip, you know. I have a white cane and a bright pink hat, can't miss me, and something like that. So just those little touches actually help and make a difference.
Yeah, Namecca, that actually it brings up like a really good point, is thinking through, I think when I started here a few years ago, the AccessLink used to just drop off like at the main gate, like on the street, and folks would be left outside the gate wondering like where they were exactly. But as AccessLink like started to drop off here more, we met with the drivers and told them, you can pull in and drop folks off at the Welcome Center, and you can come in and pick them up. And now it's gotten to the point where like our staff will see the drivers and just wave them right through. And we've assigned like a designated space. I love the idea of a sign. Actually, that makes it a lot easier for everyone, so they don't even have to ask us any questions. They just know where to pick up and drop off. So thank you.
Even the audio environment. For those who don't know, when the AccessLink bus pulls up, it's got an audio announcement. AccessLink has arrived. It broadcasts it through the vehicle. So if you know that you're in an environment where you're not going to be able to hear that, it's a noisy city street, there's a lot of stuff going on, have your director of patron services have a staff there to help people identify so that they don't miss their ride home. Because if you do, the time it takes to reroute a bus back to you, I mean, 2 hours is probably minimum. So little details like that are very important. Pins in the map, right? Here in Mercer County, we have a very large park. There's a lot of events that go on in it. None of them have a specific address. They're not XXX something street. They have pin coordinates. So when these things go on, I've called AccessLink quite a bit to coordinate. Listen, they're going to the ice skating rink. I know there's no street address, but looking at the map, the coordinate is this, this, this by this west. And those guys are able to drop pins in their maps so that their drivers have it. So these little minuscule details are a fairly big deal to someone who could potentially be stranded out there on their own without the supports that they need.
I want to add to what you just said. Sorry. But so if you plan far in advance, we're able to come to the event, the location, have someone actually drive there and say, oh, this is where you want it, and we save that space. So that pin, we're able to do that seamlessly. And then the customer, when they call, we can say, oh, we have that address saved already. It's blah, blah, blah. You're going to the event on such and such a date. And the more information we have, the easier it is for us to help support the customer. So I forgot all about that, but we do that too.
And Sam, could you you mentioned briefly about the training of your staff. Could you just talk about how often you do it, what's entailed in the training of your customer service staff?
Yeah, definitely. So what we do is once we onboard new staff, they get a training immediately, just in general about guest services. But what we'll do is actually throughout the year is follow up with them about specific types of training. We do a cultural accessibility training every year with our staff, but then what we do is we sort of divide everyone up into smaller groups throughout the year, and we focus on the types of information that we want to share. So maybe 1 month might be something like transportation, another month might be just all call center things. And we have our staff actually sort of help us define the training and that what are the questions that our guests are asking us? What questions are you hearing all the time? What are their frustrations when they're here? And again, getting that feedback not only from our staff, because they're, my staff, they're the ones who hear every single little thing. Even if they're walking around, they just overhear someone's frustration with the map or frustration of not knowing where they are. That's feedback that we want to take and sort of try to think of a solution. But what we've also trained our staff to do is actually think about accommodation on a one-on-one basis as opposed to a big fix that will help solve everything, because everyone's needs are different. And if we are too focused on a big solution, then we can't actually address the problem that's right in front of us. And it's thinking in empowering our staff too in a way that, hey, you have the power to also help. This person, they can't find the drop-off spot. If you're free, take a walk over there, walk the patron over there, just to help them out. And no one's gonna get mad at you. None of this is punitive or anything like that. This is what we wanna do, is to make everyone's experiences as good as they can be, so that way they can return, they will spread the word. And then also taking the feedback and anything critical that might happen is actually listening, and I'm talking about actively listening, and addressing it as soon as possible, following up with the guest if it was something that was really that we could have done a lot better, is just making that one-on-one connection.
Great, thank you. Erica and Reed, so I'm not sure if, in speaking with our organizations, if they really utilize or understand the services of their county offices of aging. And I know there's so many services that the agencies provide. So if you could talk a little bit about the services, how organizations can partner with their county agencies on aging. And I know we talked a little bit about even as a resource for things in the community, because a lot of individuals want to maybe make a day of it. So they want to go to the cultural venue, but they also might want to explore other things in their community and have an understanding what is or is not accessible. So if you could share that, that
Absolutely.
would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the offices on aging are designated by federal law under the Older Americans Act, and there in New Jersey are 21 of us. So every county is represented by an Office on Aging. We're all known by a little bit of a different name. We're the Mercer County Office on Aging, ADRC. Some may go by the AAA, which is an area agency on aging. So different name, all the same place. There's one main phone number that you can reach any Office on Aging throughout the county, throughout the state of New Jersey, through a landline. It will get you directly to your Office on Aging. On a cell phone, it'll kind of ping off of wherever it's picking it up, but we can get you to the right place. So if you want to jot down, it's 888 222-3737. Is that right? Yes. I don't call myself, so. So you can always reach one of us. So through the Older Americans Act, we receive federal funds and state funds to be a planning and coordinating agency in our county. So with that money, we are responsible for going out into the community. We have things like a needs assessment. We have public hearings. We do group visits. We do health fairs. We talk to people and find out where that money should be going, because we fill gaps. We fill gaps in service. We do focus on lower income individuals, minorities, non-English speaking people, people with a disability, which we have some different funding that Reed can talk about. We'll get into that after. That's not covered under the Older Americans Act, but we are a designated ADRC, so it's a no wrong door model. Where you can call us, you can reach out to us, and we will guide you in the direction. We never like to give you a, we don't know, sorry, we can't help you answer. We always like to find something that may be able to accommodate your specific need, and if you don't find it works, you call us back and we'll try to navigate something else. With our funding, we do have a gamut of services that run from county transportation. We have in-home services. We have a congregate meal program where people come in. We serve about 600 people a day throughout Mercer County in a congregate setting, and we serve another probably 300 people through home delivered meals. We have respite care services, and that's also one thing I want to kind of talk about too, is, you know, the people who are caring for somebody with a disability. They may not be able to get out as frequently as possible because they don't have somebody qualified to take care of the individual that they're caring for. So respite care is a really big thing also, that when you talk about putting resources on your website, you may want to think about that too. And your Offices on Aging could assist with that. Even if you have a little spot for caregiver links and resources, you know, it really would help people to find, like, oh, I didn't even think of that. I didn't think that I could have somebody who's trained and qualified to, you know, medically supervise or just sit with my individual if needed. So there are all different services that we fund through the office. There's a different piece of disability services that are funded through county funds, and I'll let Reed speak on that.
So in the county of Mercer, at least, through things like community involvement and needs assessments, the county takes some of its direct funding. So the funding that Erica is referring to is federal funding. It's Older Americans Act. It's for individuals over the age of 60. In Mercer County, we have a pot of funds that we utilize specifically for disability services, but with the same goal in mind. They're attempts to be gap in the system fillers as much as they can be. And they run the gamut from respite care for families who are caring for children who have disabilities. We work with a recreation program, something that's fairly sort of pertinent to today's conversation. We fund a program through our local Center for Independent Living. If you're not familiar with what a Center for Independent Living is, you should be. There's 11 in the state of New Jersey. Every county is served. Most serve 2 to 3 counties. But they are advocacy organizations for anyone of any age with any disability. They've got a set of core services, but they, much like us, are a no wrong door. There's nothing you can't call them with. So we work with our local center to fund a program called Community Connections. And the concept is it's not just a recreation program where periodically people get together and have a good time. It is meant to be a recreation program which builds your local recreation knowledge toolbox. So it's a program where probably the most trusted organization in our county as far as people with disabilities vets a location that they go to. You know, if you get a flyer for this program, that they've checked that AccessLink goes there, that Mercer County Trade goes there, that it's physically accessible, that the bathrooms are accessible, that it's going to be a place you can go. You've had somebody who knows what they're talking about look into it before they even set it up. The concept is then you go and you have a good time at the Trenton Thunder Stadium or at the county movies in the park or whatever it happens to be, and you see that it is something you enjoy and that it is something where you are accepted and I could totally do this. AccessLink could drop me off right there. I could come right in. You build up this knowledge, which also, and John mentions word of mouth as being your primary source of where people find out about things. This also does that. It networks out through the community. Maybe your friend didn't go, but they're going to hear about it from you either directly or on Facebook or what have you about how good of a time it was and how you didn't experience any of the issues that you typically do if you try to go places. So in that way, we are working to try to educate the community about what's out there for them. What we're talking about here today and the accessibility, I mean, think about the number of restaurants that are just in this county alone, and we're not a particularly dense county, right? Start looking up north, that number exponentially increases. Think about how often they change and go out of business and come in and out. So it's very, very difficult to compile this sort of compendium of options. Instead, you kind of have to get out there and have resources that you can utilize to plan for you. Everybody is different, right? What a woman like Wanda needs out of an experience versus what a person like Beth needs with their different disabilities. They're the gamut. We haven't even talked about intellectual disabilities or emotional disabilities, things like autism where you are sensitive to perhaps light or sound or both. So it's impossible, I think, to have this main place. What you have to do is know your tools and how you can navigate to get the info that you need. So one of the things that I'd encourage everybody in this room who's from a cultural venue to do is to provide linkages to organizations like us, to organizations like the Centers for Independent Living, because these are hubs of that kind of thing. And these are people, we talk about transportation. Namecca mentions that it's a multi-layered process, and it absolutely is. One of my duties day to day is answering the phone and assisting community members with disability issues, and transportation, much like in this discussion, is pretty high up the list about what people need. So there are multiple options. There is AccessLink, there's the state, or the county has trade transportation, there's Ride Provide, there's a ton of other things that you may not think of. The state's Division of Developmental Disabilities, your budget can be used for transportation, including accessible transportation. I try to make sure that I know what companies are working under that funding. So if you call me and say, I have DDD and I can't go anywhere, well, listen, Breezy Transportation will accommodate you, or Life Ride is fully accessible transportation. The Personal Assistant Services Program, which is a function of the state's Division of Disability Services, it's for people who have permanent physical disabilities and are working or volunteering or preparing to engage in the community. What an assistant can do under that program, one of the allowable tasks is transportation. So we are not talking about something where there's a plug-in answer. It's not just put this number on your website and you guys are covered and go on with your day. So it helps to be able to direct people to these hubs that are there specifically for navigation purposes, and that's a main factor of what we do. In fact, the ADRC stands for Aging and Disability Resource Connection. I've always thought of the distinction between an ADRC and an Office on Aging as being that direct system navigation help. The Aging and Disability Resource Connection, that's what we are. We provide as much resources as we can to help you address whatever you're dealing with. The Office on Aging is planning and assessing needs and putting out grants. So the last thing I'll say, because I don't know if you noticed, I'm kind of talkative.
That's why I brought them today.
Is about grants. We put out grants to help people access the community. We put out grants to have recreational experiences, to build out your social networks, your peer networks. Keep an eye on our website if you can provide those things in Mercer County and apply for those grants. There are pots of money out there for them. I'm on the National Theater Alliance Just Maine email blast. The bulk of emails I get from them are grant opportunities. I push them right out to our area partners who I know have these kind of goals of exposing consumers to community resources, of having them have recreational experiences, because they can get that money and utilize it. So those things are out there too, both at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. So it's a tool that all of your organizations could be using. You just have to know where to find the opportunities. And if you'd like to know about Mercer, please reach out to me.
I'm going to echo what Reed and Erica just shared, because in the 30-ish years that Grounds has been open, when I reached out to them last year to just sort of see like what services they offered, we had never, as an organization, reached out to our county services before. And the wealth of information that the two of them were able to share with us has been incredible. Just like a few weeks ago, I saw the Mercer trade bus. I had never seen it in the 7 years I've been working here, pass by. And I was like, Reed, what is this bus? Like, what does it do? And he gave me a full list of information that now, as a director of guest services, we can pass on to our guests who come from Mercer County, which is like our immediate county that we're in. But also thinking through, like I don't live in Mercer County. I would say like 50% of our staff don't live in Mercer County. We don't know what the resources are, and our county services do, and they're invaluable.
That's great. And Reed, those particular grant opportunities, so all the offices throughout the state have those programs available, is that right?
Correct. So under the Older Americans Act, there is a allotment of money that comes down to the state. The state has a Division of Aging Services. They utilize some of it for a number of support programs. And then portions are distributed to every county. What each county does depends on how they assess their needs and what they see the gaps are and how they try to fill them. So it's not, what Ocean County is doing will not mirror what we're doing, at least not 100%, but that funding is there. And if you look into it and you see that it is not being utilized for things where you're finding needs in the communities, advocate yourself, reach out to your county, encourage your patrons to do that. That there is this place that's looking for the needs and maybe they don't know about yours. Here's their next public hearing. Here's their posted assessment that you can just grab from their website or fill out directly online anymore. There's very little printing happening these days. But yes, those things are available all over the place and multiple sources. I don't know, working in the nonprofit world for as long as I have, you become a grant hound a little bit. So it is not just governmental grants, although they tend to be prevalent and larger, but there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Erica, did you have a comment?
Did you have a follow-up question? Because I didn't want to
did.
trail off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just in terms, and it was been touched upon a little bit, but just in terms of how organizations can be more proactive in working with their county agencies, my guess is, as Sam just mentioned, many probably don't even realize about the resource that's available to them. So what would you suggest would be some of the first steps that organizations can start to form these important partnerships?
I mean, really, the first thing is just call us. Just call us and say, this is who we are, this is what we're looking for, this is what we would want to do. I mean, I know that we try to attend as many events now that we're all back in the bright sunshine of the world, and try to get out there as much as we possibly can. We just celebrated our 55th birthday, and we're still the best kept secret in Mercer County. So, word of mouth again, and just reaching out. We also have our partner agencies, like Reed was talking about, the Progressive Center. We have Project Freedom. The Project Freedoms are independent living housing for people with disabilities, but they also have programming that want to not just bring things to their homes or their community, but get them out into the community, have them going to places and parties and events and venues and movies, whatever it might be. So, again, we can link you with our partner agencies that you just might not even be aware of. And sometimes even that just kind of warm handoff really makes quite a difference. We also I sit on, which have been recently engaged again, is the Coalition for Coordinated Transportation. So every county should have a plan, and again, I believe this is for federal money, that people who are applying for grants to provide transportation need to be part of that plan in some way, or follow what our goals of that plan are. And I know here in Mercer, we are looking again to update that plan, and one of those core pieces of the plan are, where do people want to get to? I mean, we know doctor's offices, we know Acme and ShopRite and the CVS's of the world, but what about you? I mean, if you're hearing that people want to come and visit your location, but they can't get there, that should be part of our plan. We need to include that in our plan, and that's what we want in these plans. So we know that, listen, we have all these locations, but people can't get there. So, you know, again, coordinated transportation. In our county, it's run through not our office, but we're members of that board. So again, just we're an information and referral source. We're an information and assistance source. And it's not just for people who are calling because they need the meal or they need the ride. We talk to community agencies as well. We were talking about like social media support groups, that there may be things that you can link there. Hand that over to you.
Sure. So again, as she said, it's worth mentioning that we are not just a consumer direct resource. It is not just the person who needs the help who's able to contact us and pick our brains and get resources. We work with caregivers. We work with community organizations and service providers. The more effective everybody in this room is, the less work there is on any one of us, including us. You know what I mean? So if we can help you make yourself more accessible to the public, that's less public members who are reaching out to us and going, we don't know how to do this thing. So it's certainly very important. When you come to promoting, there are, again, word of mouth, grassroots efforts. The Progressive Center for Independent Living, not to harp on them, but it's rare to find an organization that is as broad in scope. I also used to work for them. I don't know if you figured that out. But when I was there, we started a Facebook page called Disability Friendly Summer Camps and Activities. One of the programs, actually funded by the county, provided by the Progressive Center, is a summer camp and summer experience stipend to youth with disabilities. Kids between the ages of 4 and 25 with any disability can get some extra money to go out and do whatever they want to do. It's been summer camps, it's been driving lessons and cooking lessons and all of these sort of things. So we set up a website. People didn't know where they could go. Well, I could tell you all day long, yeah, summer experience. Literally, if you're in between Memorial Day and Labor Day and you enjoy the experience, we can help you afford it. So that's wonderful. What can we do? And again, you can't compile a list that is comprehensive like that. It is just not feasible. So our solution was to start a Facebook group. It's got upwards of 160 members at this point. People of the public who want to find out what to do, people who have done fun stuff and share their experiences, providers from the Hamilton YMCA to the Mercer County Library System, and people just post up there. So we sort of created this grassroots peer sharing network. So there are some things like that that you guys can do. You can also sort of look at the opposite end of the spectrum. I don't know if you're aware, but there are a number of companies that do disability trip planning specifically. If anybody's ever gone to the Abilities Expo, which happens biannually, usually up in Edison, there's a whole row of those guys. I see some folks from the Division of Disability Services here today. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Do some research, reach out to these organizations, make sure they know that you're accessible. At the same time, see if you can pick their brains about information locally that they might know that you might not, because that's their thing. So there are a number of ways that you guys can market and promote. We would be happy to share the information if your venue is accessible to the portions of the population that we serve. We run a quarterly newsletter. We do it in conjunction with our local Center for Independent Living, so there are both aging and disability resources and stories and ideas presented because we serve both populations. We'd be happy, in fact, we were talking about this as we were brainstorming. You know, on a panel, John was nice enough to send us a little inkling of what we'd be talking about today. We'd love to start a regular accessible spot feature in that newsletter where we're spotlighting a place in town, be it a restaurant or an entertainment venue or a place here like Grounds for Sculpture. Every quarter, a specific spotlight, and then we can maintain a general list that doesn't have all of those details and glowing descriptions, but just has previously featured so that you know. So there are a number of ways that you could reach the people that you want, provide them what they need, either directly or through organizations like us, and let them know, you know, as Beth said, that you care, that you thought about this, that this is a place for them, you know.
That's great. I know a lot of our organizations, we encourage them to form advisory boards or to share advisory boards with cultural groups in their community, representing all different sectors of the community. And is this something, for example, are there colleagues around the state from New Jersey Transit, the county offices, where where some folks might be willing to volunteer to meet periodically with our cultural organizations and just help them navigate some of the things that they're thinking about in terms of access, be an advocate for them in terms of getting the word out about their offerings. So maybe to talk a little bit about how our organizations can work even more closely in that kind of a capacity to help them assess and navigate their work.
So again, as an Office on Aging, through the Older Americans Act, we ourselves have advisory councils. So we do have members that we sit on a board of the Aging Council. We have the Disabilities Council. We're hoping twice a year we will be able to bring them together. So we're also talking about, through the 21 counties, re-engaging a regional advisory council. So that might be something that, as the regional councils, we would be able to have a north, a central, and a southern region and have representation even at that council, or pull some council members who are more active and would want to join an additional advisory council. So we do have active people who are, very engaged in their communities, both on the aging and disabilities side. One of the other things we were thinking as well, because this brought up a lot of good conversation amongst us, saying, like, this is not really something that we do maintain this, but we do know we can go and talk to the Progressive Center or Project Freedom or see where they have gone. If somebody does happen to call us and say, I want to go somewhere, I don't know where I can go, we can rely on those resources. So one of the things that we're thinking of doing is to take a look at our current and existing needs assessment and start asking these questions. Where are some of the places that you can get to? Where can you not get to? What are the distinguishing features of a location that would make it most accessible? Or what are your barriers? So we're looking to even start engaging that way, so we can start pulling that information and get the information from the people who would best be suited to provide it. So again, there are just some other ways and venues that we can kind of all collectively gather.
Well, advisory councils are a great point. It's something that we hadn't thrown into our notes, but as we sit here talking, we probably should. So we have the Director of Patron Services for the Princeton Symphony, takes part in both our Disability Advisory Council and what's referred to as the Core Advisory Group, which is an advisory group specifically towards emergency preparedness and people with disabilities, access, and functional needs being recipients of emergency services. Certainly we have started sitting on the Grounds for Sculpture Access Advisory Group, and Sam, you are more than welcome to join our Disability Advisory Council anytime you'd like. These things are open to the public. There are specific memberships, which is, it speaks more to being able to vote on initiatives and who's going to be an officer and a treasurer and those kind of things. But the meetings themselves, literally every person in this room can join in our next Disability Advisory Council if you'd like. I'll send you the Zoom link. We found that the Zoom was necessary, but now is very convenient. We were able to get a larger portion of the disability community joining in by offering that virtual at least option on that kind of thing. So they are public groups. They will be this way across the county, at least as we talk about things that are organized at the county level for disability advisory, aging advisory councils. So contact your local county, contact us. Again, happy to have you join.
That's great. Namecca, and in terms of your colleagues around the state, how, in terms of engaging in an advisory capacity, how might that work?
Well, it's pretty similar to what they described. If you invite us in, we're like vampires. We have to be invited. We have to be invited in. We just don't show up and say, hey, what about transportation? But I've had the pleasure of actually being included in a couple of the county coordinated plans. And it's a beneficial experience for the provider and the county. So they kind of assemble this like super team of everybody. So they surround the consumer or the residents, and you kind of get to see every aspect of the person's life and how we all need to coordinate, because we want to take some of the burden off of the person. We were having a really interesting discussion before the event started about, wouldn't it be nice if everybody who benefited from me coming outside with my wallet had a conversation? You want me to come outside, you want me to stay outside, and you want me to do things. Well, why don't you guys get together and work it out, and then I can just show up and enjoy the event? So we're talking about the employer. You know, we don't think about, when we are business owners, we think about operating hours and how much money we need to make, how many hours we need to be open. But if I can't get there when you open, I'm losing money, you're losing money, can we coordinate? Events, we want you to stay outside. You came outside, make the best of it. Go eat, go shop, go peruse, like all of those things that we want people to do, but we make it so hard for them to do it. So I think there needs to be more coordination with us, the providers, the transportation folks, the retail folks, everybody who benefits from you being outside. Let's coordinate. So those committees and advisory meetings are really informative. You get to have conversations that are not being had every day. And everybody leaves from it learning something. So like I've been scribbling, writing notes like, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, so really just having the conversations are beneficial for the resident, the customer, the patron. So just keep engaging in those kind of talks. But for us, simple as a phone call, either you're voluntold or you volunteer, but we're involved. So as many times as you invite us, we show up. So.
Namecca, I'm so glad you said that, because you were straight up going to get an invite from our Access Advisory Council after this. But it's absolutely right. I think the more connections that we can make, the more comfortable folks will be to reach out and to call, because they know as an organization you have the answers. But if you don't have the answers, you have resources to actually pass them on. And that way they're not playing that game of like Googling, how do I get to grounds for sculpture? How do I get to this? We can provide answers, and if we don't know, we know someone who might know.
So this is such a great conversation, and I know that many of you out there have some questions, thoughts, comments for our panel. So we'd like to open this up to all of you. Daria is right there with a microphone, so please raise your hand, just acknowledge, and Daria will come over to you for any comment, questions that you have for our panel. So don't be shy.
This question.
Thank you. Hi, can you hear me through my mask?
Yes.
Okay. So this has been an excellent panel, not just because I know and love several people up there, but I know that this may be a question to start with John. Is there a toolkit that we have to give organizations in terms of how to connect with county offices on disabilities, or just suggesting what we would ask them to provide for people with disabilities that want to come to their organization? Thank you.
We don't have a toolkit per se. We do on the website, we do have a list of all the county offices with contact information. But my thought here is to really, again, invite the counties in more to our roundtable discussions that we offer, our Access Thursday conversations, so where we can actually have you make sure that you're all meeting your counterpart and finding ways in which you can connect. But I think, as Erica and Reed said, you know, the important thing is for each of you to be sure to reach out to those partners in your community, get to know them, make the phone call, invite them to an event, try to have some conversations so that they're clear on what you're offering. So utilize that contact sheet that is on the website. But I think we at the Cultural, with the Cultural Access Network, we can also be a bit more proactive in making sure that we're introducing some of those folks to you in our roundtable discussions.
Hello. I just wanted to know the telephone number that was mentioned earlier. Could we find that on the website? It was a 1-888 number.
Yeah, the 877-222-3737, and every county would have that. They'll have their local phone number, and they'll also have our statewide phone number.
Can you repeat that
Sure.
one more time?
877-222-3737.
Thank you.
We have also brought a flyer for our Mercer County agency, as well as copies of our quarterly newsletter. I figure if I was going to pitch it as a marketing tool, you might as well see what it is. So anybody who's interested, please come and see me. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. You're more than welcome to take it. Call us anytime.
Great. We had another question here.
Hello, how you doing? My question, there was something that stood out as far as an ally goes. What can an ally do that can be helpful versus being a hindrance?
Good question. Yes.
The first thing is really educate yourself on your area, your services that are available, because the more you are attuned with the changes, the schedules, the rules, the guidelines, you really can pass that on to the resident, the customer, the consumer. So we always, AccessLink, we try to be a resource of information. So we are very familiar with county, with our local state, Paratransit. We cover the whole state of New Jersey and Center City, Philadelphia. So of the 21 counties, we service 18, but we also keep up with what's going on in the other 3 that don't have fixed route service. But we try to, educate ourselves so that we can pass that on and be a resource. So as much as you can tolerate to learn about transportation and all these other wonderful things, just, and not memorizing it, but just really, like they said, knowing where to get information and who to reach out to. So making that connection of this is the point person for this, and just being in touch with that community partner. So we always try to make sure we educate ourselves on what's going on.
So just to kind of answer from my perspective as a disabled person, when someone says, as an ally, what can I do to, what can I do to not be a hindrance? The first thing you should do is not make assumptions about the person in front of you with the disability, and the next thing you can do is say, how can I help? Don't assume that you know what they need or what they want. Ask how you can be a benefit and how you can help them. So, I mean, that sounds really simple, but a lot of people don't think about that. So I'll give you guys an example. So as a blind person, and this happens to me regularly, I, using my cane to navigate, and sometimes I'm in spaces and people are well-meaning and they want to help me, and they will come up and grab my elbow and try and pull me somewhere. And rather than come up and say, do you need help? How can I help you? People just make assumptions and they kind of pull me around sometimes, which is disconcerting. But the first thing I say to people is that, the first thing you should do is ask, how can I help you? Or do you need help? That's another thing. So yeah, that's the way to be a good ally.
This is Beth. The other thing I also want to add is, this might be a little bit off point, but like in kind of the disability community that I work with, we're kind of trying to veer away a little bit from the term accessibility. Accessibility is kind of fixing what was broken. Accessibility is kind of adding something to something that you do because it's not allowing me to come. So it's not available. So we make it accessible, something that wasn't. And I think what we're trying to say is we're getting into an area of disability justice and disability equity versus talking about accessibility and accommodations. And I know it's a stretch, and of course I still talk about accessibility, and but it's kind of changing a mindset for everybody and acknowledging that everybody's different. Everybody has a difference, no matter what, and acknowledging that disability is just another difference. So it's not so much that we're doing these accessibility services as we want to be inclusive of everyone, and that everyone is different, and how can we kind of allow people with whatever difference you have to enjoy our venues and enjoy what we provide. So I think it's kind of a shift that we're not talking about disability rights, we're not talking about accessibility, we're just talking about an area where it's just a group of people who just happen to, in this situation, be a little different from that person, who also has differences that I might not know. And it's being respectful of people's differences. And the allyship question, too, is that in any kind of setting, a person with a disability tends to be the person that asks about his disability, and what can I go to, and what's accessible and what's not accessible. And allyship, to me, in a big part, is you asking the question, and you kind of acknowledging that you're thinking about that, and it's not just me. And I think that to me is a big part of allyship, that it's not on the shoulders of people with disabilities only to allow everyone to be inclusive in our society. It's everybody's responsibility. And the more we share that and people see that it's not just the person with a disability raising their hands, it's somebody asking the question, is to me like a great point of allyship, that we kind of as a common society are sharing this burden that I might have, that it's not just me. And so to me, that's a big point of allyship.
Thank you for sharing that, Beth. Yeah, this is Sam. The way we like sort of want to think about like hospitality in general is just that everybody needs an accommodation. And moving away from like the medical model of a disability to like a social model of this entire world, like our world was created without people like, what am I trying to say? This world was created with like accessibility not in mind. And now what we're doing here is trying to fix it. And it's like, we can fix it in small parts, but what can we do to sort of think through the future, where we can sort of think through what can we do just to offer this sort of hospitality to folks everywhere, anyone who comes in through the door. What can we do to help you? What can we do to anticipate your needs? What can we do to just sort of make it so that you don't have to ask all the questions? We're providing the answers for you in a way that you can just find easily, or when you get here, we have the answers for you already, and we're ready to go.
Absolutely. I mean, everything that have been talking about, and we've shared this in some of the roundtables over the years, is that this is just, at the end of the day, this is just very good customer service. And we should be thinking of our patrons and guests all the same, because as mentioned, everybody is going to have some specific needs. And I think if you can be a little bit more proactive, I still have yet to experience this, and one day I will. But when you call and make a reservation at a box office, or you're reserving something at maybe an exhibit, and you actually speak to somebody, if somebody could actually say, is there something I can do that would make your visit with us more accommodating? Because what you're doing, to Beth's point, is that you're thinking about it. You're not asking the individual, the patron, to do all the work. And a lot of individuals human nature, don't always feel comfortable stating what their needs are voluntarily. But as an organization, if we do the asking, and just we want to make sure when you get here that we're doing everything we can to make your experience with us totally awesome, what can we do? People will open up and they'll say, well, now that you've mentioned it, and it may not be just for themselves, it might be for their friend, their spouse that is joining them for the cultural experience. So I think that's what Beth said is a really important point, that we need to do some of the work up front and not always rely on the patron. Where? Yeah.
Hello. My name is Gina, and I am the Director of Equity and Organizational Culture at the McCarter Theater Center. So we have a broad variety of like live performances, but also music and spoken presentations and things like that too. Our building has been called a fortress by some of our new employees, so we definitely have to work on a lot of physical things. What's been going through my mind are actually like three things, like as I've been sitting here. One, and I don't know if I don't know if this is a question, but I just like something is like how to help people think about accessibility in more intersectional ways, because the same needs that I have as a parent is the same needs as someone with mobility disability would take advantage of. And also in terms of I come out of very much critical race theory, so what accessibility means in terms of speaking to a person and asking them what they need, and if they feel that there is a sense of belonging and that we've thought about the kind of environment and experience that they're coming from is also really important, whether that's in physical space, whether that's in cultural, racial spaces and those kinds of things. So how to expand the idea of accessibility intersectionally. I have, this a bit of a catch-22, and I don't know if other people are experiencing this as well, of giving myself as a very able-bodied person who identifies not having necessarily identifying with disability, although I'm sure there's something rolling around in there. And eventually, as we all know, I will come into the disability spectrum at some point in my life, we all will. To provide, how do I create a space of listening for myself and for my organization? So how do we, there are people that can potentially come into our spaces and we can ask these questions of what is it? What would optimize your experience? But then we have to wait for them to come into our space. So the catch-22 is, well, how do we invite them in more proactive ways to come into space to begin with? So this is the part of the catch-22 is, a lot of arts organizations, our resources just dwindle, and it feels like we're all running on fumes in this moment. So I'm trying to even just think of what is the even marketing strategy or something like that, because for example, I feel there's, in terms of audio description, for example, I feel we are in contact with 2 audio describers in the region, and we're just oh my gosh, are there any more? We don't know. And I know there's work to increase that population to a certain extent, but then it feels such a huge thing just to be able to find audio describers and then to schedule them and then to put them on the calendar. And then the last 2 audio described performances that we had at McCarter, no one took advantage of it. So it's oh, yes. So they do the more the communication work to be able, and I'm so happy to hear about all of the social networking and just where people are actually even getting information. But I just think it has just the comprehensive nature of the work in terms of communication, but also to dispel myself of the myth that if you build it, they will come, and then, but, which I know inherently, but how to maybe work smarter about offering the thought behind the offering, and also the conversation that involves the question, but also in terms of awareness. So that's kind of what's been going on. I don't know if there's a question in there, but that's...
There was a couple of things.
John, may I speak to the audio
Wanda?
description piece?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I have attended 2 events very recently at McCarter Theater. I'm very thankful that you all exist and that you've been offering audio description for a very long time. Thank goodness. I was just at the Samara Joy concert on June 2nd. It was great. And as a blind woman who happens to be African American, I have to say, I always feel very welcome there, and I see myself there when I go to McCarter. There are people of all races and ages and things of that nature, so it's a comfortable space, and yeah, it is like a fortress. I have to say, the physicality of your building is not necessarily, the most accessible, but we get around that. I also did attend an audio described showing of Wuthering Heights the musical on March something. In March, I attended that, and the audio describer did a great job. So with the piece about, if you build it, they will come, I just want to let everyone in a room know that in terms of audio description, if you offer any audio described theater events, or your museum has audio description for your installations and exhibits and things of that nature, the American Council of the Blind, which is the national organization under which my state organization falls under, they have what's called the Audio Description Project, which is a database and a website that anybody can go to, and it's about everything audio described. So if you're looking for film, movies, streaming, theaters, national parks, anything of that nature. So for instance, if your organization offers any kind of audio description, you can be added to that database, so that blind or visually impaired people, we would go there and say, oh, okay, so McCarter Theater offers audio described showings of their different offerings each season, or whether, I think, because you guys do matinees, I think, mainly like a Saturday matinee or something like that. So, but that's a good place to start. And if any of you want to be added, because you do have audio described programming, we will connect here today. But you can contact me, and I can contact those at the Audio Description Project, and you can be added, because, like I said, that particular website, which is, I think it's adp@acb.org, is everything audio described. You can literally go into the search box, look up a film movie title, streaming. It'll tell you whether that particular thing is audio described, and if you're looking for a national park that has audio description, or, like I said, theaters that show audio description programming, you could be listed. So that's just what I wanted to add to that. And I want to say thank you to McCarter, because over the years, it was the first place I ever experienced audio description. Like, I didn't, it was, where I put my toe in. So I didn't even know, before I even saw anything on film or television, I experienced audio description at McCarter. So you guys do good work, and don't beat yourself up so much. Thank you.
And this is Beth. And I just think also to add, I think that was the point of this panel, was really to talk about that it's not just the service. So the service kind of combines, if you have a fortress and you're a little bit off the beaten path, and transportation might be an issue as to why people can or can't attend, then that now becomes kind of partnering with, we're doing an audio description, what else might we need paired with that audio description performance that would help this constituency get to the venue for it? So it's maybe looking at the service that you're providing and what might be the additional barriers in attendance, and could I call a paratransit and set up transportation for that performance, knowing that's an audio description performance. People who are blind, low vision might have difficulty getting to the venue. So what can I do in addition to an audio description performance to get an audience? You're also dealing with, if you're trying to welcome in a new audience, it's like any kind of marketing you would do for any constituency that's new, that doesn't have, the other thing too is, in addition to the audio description, do people know how to get to the box office, like where things are? The whole experience of accessing your organization, again, doesn't start when the show starts. It's like, where's the box office? How can I get there? Is there, will you have people to assist me where the bathroom is? I don't know where the bathroom is. Can I get to the bathroom at intermission if I can't find it, if I don't know where it is? So there's a whole, and the other thing about staff and training, I'm just of the mind, I think you need to be open and talk about disability and answer people's questions and let people ask questions that they're embarrassed to ask. You make it a safe space. You allow people to ask kind of dumb questions and questions that they're not sure of, and they might be embarrassed, or is this the right word, or shouldn't. I mean, I think in general, in terms of disability, it's fear. I think people are afraid of disability. I think people don't know, they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, so they say nothing. And I think until we get to the point where if you don't know, ask. And if I don't want to answer, it's okay if I don't want to answer. But I would much rather you ask a question that I then find, that's a little personal, I don't want to answer. You should be allowed to ask that question in a respectful way, and I should be allowed to answer it in a respectful way. And so I think until we get to the point where people can ask those questions and have those conversations and not know what to say, and somebody goes, you shouldn't say that word is not like the accepted word in this field, but you have to know that. And I think that we shouldn't necessarily expect everybody to know everything. I don't. You come in, you say something and go, don't say that, and it was like, okay. So, but I think that just in our society, we just are so afraid of saying the wrong thing, so we don't say anything. And we should have spaces where, you bring in a person with a disability, and it's open, and it's like, ask me whatever you want to ask me. And if I don't want to answer it, I won't. But if I do, I will. And I think that's how the only way we're going to change. So.
This is Sam. Beth, you're absolutely right. I think what it is just not being afraid of talking to each other. Like, we're all people. And then, to answer your question, I think what we found too is like, it's not even necessarily bringing folks here, like say, to Grounds for Sculpture. It's how can we bring Grounds for Sculpture out into the community so they actually are aware that we are here. There's so many times we get folks from Hamilton who say they've never been here. They've lived in Hamilton their entire life and they've never had heard of Grounds for Sculpture. And Hamilton is not a large town by any means. And really that, as an organization, it sort of has to shift your thinking of like, okay, if they can't come to us, how can we get ourselves out to them to tell folks about what we can offer here? And we can maybe sort of answer their questions again before they come to visit us so that we can help them plan. To follow up on, as part of the question that you asked, Reed actually gave me incredible advice last year when I first met him, and I was also overwhelmed. I was like, there's so much stuff that we have to do, there's so much stuff like I need to do right away, and it's like, it doesn't have to all happen immediately now. And so we can sort of set the stepping stones to sort of help prep ourselves for the future. Look forward like 10 years. Like, what do you want your organization to look like in 10 years? And how can we sort of set this up so we can start now?
I also think there's a number of resources out there that you could tap to address some of the stuff that you talked about. I think a theme of today's conversation has been ask, right? And this is, if you spend any time in disability advocacy and the independent living movement, that is a major theme, right? No one knows better what you need than you kind of idea. So there are disability awareness and sensitivity trainings available. I would probably send you to the statewide Independent Living Council as a starting point, and they can help connect you to their local centers or through the State Division of Disability Services. If you don't know, there's no shame in not knowing, and if you want to know, find people who can teach you, right? So there are things like that for staff members. There are also a number of resources, and I'll recount something that we just did recently. Our county public health department wants to make sure that they have a representation of Braille materials for the things that they are supplying out there to the community. I don't know where to get Braille printed, do you? I've worked in the field for a decade. I don't know where to get Braille printed. But I contacted the state Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. They were not only able to give me a couple of vendors who do this and that you could go to for your materials, but also some insight that I had no idea of. One, and Wanda mentioned this earlier, many people who lose their vision midlife do not read Braille. Your typical Braille reader is someone who has been blind from birth or very, very early childhood. And it's a very small percentage of the visually impaired community. So 10%? So they literally told me, listen, don't waste your money having thousands of copies printed. Your materials will get updated before you'll hand out 1,000 of them. Do yourself a favor and just do like 50 of each. So those kind of things are out there. The state has a division of the deaf and hard of hearing. the state, the Division of Disability Services has an information and referral line that anybody can call. So if you're looking at things on a larger scale, or you're not sure exactly where do I start local, do I start now, it's a great number to call. So there are things that are out there. If you don't have the opportunity to sit in a panel like this and hear me talk about them, call your local county Office of Disability Services, because this is the kind of stuff we do day in, day out.
And I do want to just add one thing to that. I love that you are grappling with these big topics, because that kind of gives insight into your investment in getting it right. And, that's not exclusive to the arts and culture. Same, okay? So I've been working at New Jersey Transit for 23 years, and every conversation that I have with a community member, a group location, an employer, I walk away with a new piece of information. So they mentioned a whole bunch of wonderful things that if you don't take anything else from this, big problems, small bites. Like, just really tackle one thing at a time. And what I've learned in these past 2 decades is, and I keep it with me in my pocket and close, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. So when your customers really, 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 they know that you're trying to get it right, they will go along with you for the proverbial ride. But when they don't see that you're asking those questions constantly, how can we do better? So we you mentioned, like, we got the audio description and nobody used it that one time, or maybe those 2 times, but just continuously making the effort and putting that effort out there, like, this is what we do, this is a part of us, like, make it a part of your identity. You will have no complaints from any potential people coming, and that word of mouth thing, that's where the trust part, one bad ride or one bad experience, you just lost like 6 months worth of trust. But those efforts, they do not go unnoticed. So I just wanted to say.
You also, and I believe McCarter does have this, so years ago we worked with Google, but you don't need to work with Google today. But we had Google come in and they filmed all of our theaters from the public transportation area to the front entrance to the box office, etc., just so that individuals that were not familiar with the facility at least had an idea in advance of what to expect. And that's, of course, beneficial for anybody that's going to be attending our venue. So something to think about, yourself, in my case, my nephew, could take their phone and just actually do your own virtual tour of your facility. So that's something to think about. Also, I just want to comment, and I think you might know this, is with the audio description, we realize there's a small pool of audio describers, and we are doing training, and hopefully we'll continue to do training. Thank you, Janet, with Michael Dundon, and I want to thank also Wanda and Miss Ruth and Crystal Allen, who are providing wonderful feedback to expand the pool of audio describers. And we also want to do a series of description for visual arts organizations, because description is slightly different for the theater versus a visual arts venue. So stay tuned for that. But I could not agree more of just going out into the community. I think that was such a good point that Sam made, is to find as many opportunities to go out into the community, to let folks know they just may not be aware of the service. And so I think we expect a lot of people to always come to us, but I think if we can start to think a little bit differently on how can we take advantage of as many opportunities to go out to the community, that will help us build those relationships. Any other questions, comments?
answered them all.
I'd like to throw one thing out here without getting off on a tangent, because we're probably a little over time anyhow. One thing we haven't talked about today is inclusivity in the employment side of all of your businesses. If you really want to be accepting of the community in its whole, then that's a relatively large part of it. And there are also ways that you guys as businesses can assist with that. And I'll throw out an example of Goodwill Industries of South Jersey and Philadelphia. They are employment support vendors through the State Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So they have a disability hiring initiative. They can not only offer you an employment, but they can offer you internal supports. And they don't come out of their pocket for it. It's funded through a program. So there are lots of opportunities out there like this, and I know that, Sam, when we've met here on a couple of occasions, employment has come up, and you guys have people with disabilities working here at Grounds for Sculpture, and that has been some of the most educational experience for you, right? Mm-hmm. So there are tons of benefits to you as an organization, benefits to you as seeing really in action what people need, benefits to the individual, benefits to the community, and taxes in general. So again, that's my spiel about don't let that piece slip out of this conversation.
So we also Beth and I just want to use this opportunity just to remind you to take advantage of some of the resources of the Cultural Access Network throughout the year. I know many of you attend our Access Thursday roundtables that we host monthly. If you have a topic of interest, please let us know. The Cultural Access Network Committee, we want to hear from all of you in terms of what specific areas of interest you might have, and so we can be sure to get that onto the schedule. We also do a lot of different trainings, so in addition to your county and other organizations, we have an incredible group of our Cultural Access Network committee members that can also provide training for your organizations. So please be willing to keep that in mind, and also take advantage of the resources that are on the website. We do update them periodically, and certainly if you know of a resource that may not be up there, please let us know, because we want to consistently add to that resource database. And Beth, do you want to talk a little bit about the calendar, just to remind people about the Access calendar?
You have an Access calendar. So basically, if you are doing any kind of accessible performances, actually it's open to everybody. So you don't have to just be a member of the Theater Alliance. Any cultural organization that wants to provide, and then on our end, we will be working with the different county offices in trying to make that connection, because I think that's the big disconnect sometimes, is that you have a program that's an accessible program, nobody in the disability community knows about it. So what we're trying to do is have the calendar, but also let people in the disability community know about the calendar so that they can go access information that will be accessible to them. So please feel free. There's on the website, go under the Cultural Access Network information. If you're not a member of the Alliance, you can become a poster for it very easily. And then if you want to post an event that's accessible, like a caption performance or an interpretive performance or an audio described performance, you can post that information. And then in turn, what we'll be doing is kind of letting the disability community know that they can access the Access calendar for information. So all the information is really easy to do, to upload. Please do.
And if you know you're going to have an event coming up, sign interpreted, audio description, etc., you might as well just get registered to be a poster up front, because that's the first step. So if you know that you may not have the date just set just yet, that's fine. Just get permission to be a poster so that you can post events in the future. I know people see poster and they think an actual physical poster. It's just giving you permission so you can post events in the future. And Beth just looks at your information. This looks legit. You're a legit nonprofit cultural organization in the state. and then gives you access and permission to post the events in the future. So you might as well just go in and just do the first step to get your organization registered to post events in the future.
And there are taped webinars that are also on the website on the website that will, if you have any questions about how to be a poster or how to upload your accessible events, we did several trainings, Lauren Mancuso and I, to the field about how to be a poster, how to upload your events. They're taped, they're there, so you can kind of run through the tape. It's very self-explanatory, and become a poster.
And I think, Maureen.
I just wanted to thank you for this panel and for everyone that's on it, because particularly with the connecting of the Commissions on Disability and the Commissions on Aging, so often I think we always think we need to reinvent the wheel. And one of the things that you folks stressed, and I think it's important for us to remember, is people have done things before. And successfully and unsuccessfully, but there is wisdom out there, and it's like pick up a phone before you try to invent it. And we are particularly lucky in New Jersey because there's a wealth of people that have been doing this. We're a small state, we're not Montana, and there's a lot of people focusing time and energy on these issues. So I really want to thank you all for all of your work, but also for stressing that. Call us. We're here. We did it. And we forget that, I think, way too often. So thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Any final questions or thoughts? Well, please help me welcome this incredible panel. Thank you, Namecca. Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, Reed, Erica, Sam, and Beth. Thank you so much. This was a great conversations. Thank you so much for your words of guidance and sharing your experiences with us. So we're going to be moving ourselves into the East Gallery, which is just around the corner, for lunch and our awards program. So we'll see you shortly around the corner. Thank you so much.